One of the easiest ways that we could generate more conversions with our Google Ads in 2026 is simply by adding call extensions or call assets, as they call them. Now, that allows potential clients who are typing in Google Ads to see your ad or jump onto your landing page or website. They can then pick up the phone, make a phone call to your business to inquire about your product or your service, which is fantastic. But there's a caveat to this, and there's always a caveat. We need to make sure with our Google Ads that the quality of those calls coming through is of a high standard. So in today's video, I want to talk about the three things to do. We need to make sure we have in place to implement to make sure the quality is of a good standard. And number two, I want to show you how to actually create some call tracking and implement some of these strategies I'm talking about. It's very simple to do, but with Google, it's lots of little places that we need to kind of put the pieces of the jigsaw together to create the overall picture to get our Google Ads, everything running and getting to a good standard. And call tracking is exactly that. So the first thing, what filters do we need with our Google Ads? The first thing, conversion counting. Ensure your goals are set to one rather than every. And the reason is if somebody's clicking on your call ad, then potentially they're going to be clicking on it multiple times and it's going to skew the data coming in. That's the first thing we need to do. So make sure that I'm going to show you how to do this. You'll ensure your goals are set to one rather than every. The second thing, call duration. So even though Google will track calls from 1 second up to however long the call is, we still want to say to Google, we want a conversion to be counted if 30 seconds of, so Google tracks your calls by seconds. So if 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever you want to add in as a barrier to say that that's a conversion, then you can make those changes within your Google Ads. And again, I would set a standard of at least 30 seconds. If you're finding that your calls that you're getting from Google is of a low quality, you can raise it to 40 seconds, 50 seconds, 60 seconds. Always be looking to try different things. So we should be testing different angles, different ways that we can do things. And again, start with 30 seconds. Again, if you're finding that you're getting spammy calls, just increase that to say 45 seconds. Again, if you're finding still the same, then increase it to 60 seconds. And then from there, you're making sure that the quality or the length of the conversation is of a good standard, because somebody might be phoning for, say, a job. So if they're phoning your business for a job, then you don't want that to be tracked as a conversion from Google, because it's kind of spammy, it's low quality. And again, if you're getting people picking up the phone, phoning for 1 second, putting the phone down, we don't want that to be tracked as a conversion. You're still going to get all the data you need, even if it's from 1 second up to 60 seconds. But what we're saying is that Google track only conversion if it's longer than, say, 30 seconds, to say that that's the information that we want to send back into Google. And friction on forms. Use multiple steps for quality prospecting with your Google Ads. If somebody can't answer or is not prepared to answer 3 basic questions to qualify themselves for whatever product or service, more service-based, then again, would that be a good quality lead? No. And again, if you're finding that you're getting low quality leads coming through, by increasing the steps on a lead form, you're going to whittle out that, because somebody's not going to spend a lot of time qualifying themselves or putting in the information to qualify themselves for your service within Google Ads. So again, I'm going to show you some of the places that you can actually implement the first 2 steps within your Google Ads strategy. Side note, Google is actually phasing out call-only ads. So they're asking you to add the Google assets within the search campaign. I'm going to show you how we can do that, but let's share this screen. So I'm looking at a sponsored result, and we can see here we've got a Clearwater Revival, and they've got a Clear Call Us. So this is a extension that we can add in. And if I was to click on this several times, if they didn't have the one and had every, then potentially if there was an issue with my computer or slow internet and I kept clicking on this, potentially this would be tracked as 4 or 5 or 6 conversions when actually it was only 1. So by adding in the one rather than every, that will make sure that any issues, Google only track the 1 call as a conversion. So this is what we're looking at for the extensions for call-only ads, or adding in call extensions to our campaigns. If we jump into a actual Google dashboard, now what we need to do when we're adding in the call tracking is, if we come into a campaign, this is a dummy campaign. So what we need to do is come to goals, summary, and then you'll see this particular screen. Now, what we can do is create a conversion action. And then from here, what we want to do is add in, there's different types of call extensions that we want to add in. The first one is if I jump into phone calls. So these are different tracking. We want to focus on phone call leads. If we track here, add a conversion. So the first one we want to do is calls from ads. So what would that be relevant to? That would be if we were to jump into this one. This is an ad and this is a call from the ad. So what we're doing now is we're tracking this bit of information to say when somebody clicks on here, it will then, you can then look at this data and it will tell you what keyword was put in to then make that call from Google Ads. And again, if we jump back into the campaign, click on the call from ads, someone clicks or calls on the ads at primary, again, we can save and continue. And then once that's done, when you create the search campaign, you would add this in as an extension, and then we would just finish this. That would be the first one that we would track, would be the call from the ads themselves. The next one we would do would be, let's jump back into summary. And then from here, we would create the second bit of tracking, which we would add in either to the landing page or to the website, depending on what your goals were. And again, we would look to the phone calls, add the conversion. So we've just done this one, which is the call from ads, which, as I've mentioned, is this particular bit of tracking. The second one we would do would be the call from the website or landing page. Is the same thing. So someone calls the number shown on the website, or somebody makes the call clicking on the number on the website. So let's stick with this one. So we would then enter the number. So again, if you're in the United States, you would have this format. Again, if I was in the United Kingdom, this is the type of format I would do. So as an example, let's jump back into this one. Actually, let's jump into, you also want it to be the format that Google is asking you for. So let's have a little look. If I was to, let's copy this number, and then we could enter it into our Google Ads. And again, that would be the format which Google is asking for. And again, we would enter that number, click on this, and then from here, we would use that event. We would save that, save and continue. And then once that's done, what we would do, we'd go back into either our landing page or our website, and then install. Let's finish this. And then again, we would jump back in, get that bit of tracking code, and then we'd install that. So we've just done these two, so calls from ads, and then this is the number we've just installed. So we would literally click on here, and then we would get the tracking code, either use tag manager or tag manager. And then from here, a simple way would be just to take this, copy it, go into your landing page or website onto the first page and track this. Now, you wouldn't necessarily enter this bit of code, because if you're tracking a conversion through a submit a form or something like that, you would already have this. So you only need to install this bit of code once, unless you're doing it through Tag Manager, which is slightly different. This is probably a simpler way of doing that. Now, what I mentioned regards to the rest of the information, again, you would give this a name. So potentially you could put this as landing page calls. And then again, we would save that information. And then from here, we could put a value. I like to put a bit of a value here, and then calls from the website. And then here's the first bit of information. So if you track every time you click, it will track that. So we just want to have that on one. So it's only tracking one call. And then again, the next bit of information, which I mentioned previously, was the call duration. You can have this as 1 second, or again, you can have this at 30 seconds. Whatever you put here as the duration, Google will track this as a conversion. So make sure that you're happy with the length of conversion time that you want within this parameters for your Google Ads, and again, for your Google Call Ads. Once we've done that, we can then jump back into a different campaign. I just want to show you how this would be seen. So once we come into campaigns, this is an account where we jump into campaigns, assets, and again, we will click on calls. And then from here, we could then add in the call that we've just created for our extension. So again, you can add this in at the account level, campaign level, or ad group level. And again, you can create a new bit of tracking or use an existing one. We could then add that in. And again, you can then add that in and then save that. And then that would be your extension. So if you wanted to just do this once, you could add this. If the numbers are all the same, you could add this for the account level. And every time you created a campaign, it would do it automatically for you. Or you could do this at the campaign level or the ad group level, depending on what you wanted to do as an overall strategy. And then from there, once we've got this up and running, again, we can actually look at the data once we've got a period of time running for the information that we've just created. So what we would do, again, come into your Google Ads, come to Insights and Reports, report editor. And then from here, we can get a lot of data as to what's actually going on with our calls coming in through Google Ads. So when we're in here, we come to frequently used reports, core details. That would tend to be at the bottom. We click on that, click on your core details. And then from here, we get a lot of information coming through. And this information is where we can start optimizing the campaign. So we can see here, duration. This is what I was talking about, 85 seconds, 6 seconds. We wouldn't want to track that 6-second call. 253, 1,880. These are the type of calls that we want to track. Anything sort of 2 seconds, somebody's picked up the phone, put the phone down, 60 seconds is what we want to track. And again, we can see numbers. And then we can potentially, if we come to the right-hand side, click on search keyword. This will tell us the keyword. You'll see it pop up here. Let me just add that in now. This will tell us the keyword that somebody has implemented for to look for the calls, and then have jumped on to make the calls. And then from there, we can look at our keyword targeting. So a lot of information I've gone through, a lot of detail very quickly, but I hope that makes sense. Make sure if you're adding your calls in, make sure you're adding in the quality to make sure that the information you're feeding back into Google is of a high quality. And then from there, you're only going to improve week on week and get better calls coming through for your Google Ads.